managers have a really hard time with these 3 steps: how to find great talent, how to onboard great talent and get them to be high performing, and then how to keep them to be long-term high performers. And that we're going to be covering this in this webinar. So again, thank you for joining us. If you look on the screen, we're going to be dividing this up into 2 major parts: how not to onboard people, and then how to onboard people. Real simple. What is the process that doesn't work, and what is the process that works? Then part 2 is going to cover how to help new team members become great performers. In this section of part 2, we're going to cover what's called the secret sauce. This will be around the 35 minute portion of the webinar, so don't miss this. If you miss the secret sauce, you miss the whole thing. Actually, no, if you miss this great sauce, you get a tremendous amount of stuff, but you're not going to have the catalyst, you're not going to have the boost to understand how to make this last. And then we're also going to get into, on the last part, is the actual tools to use the secret sauce with, and then when to use them. We're also going to get into who should be the ones that use them, and there's what's called a handoff. So I'm really excited. Let's dive right into it. All right, so who am I? Why am I qualified to even do this? Okay, well, my name is Maurice Velasquez, and again, thank you for joining us. I've been a manager, a coach, and a trainer for 25 plus years. Started my career in 1989, and I'm still going strong. Hopefully I'll stay strong for many years. 4 years of those, I was a manager of a global software company, and I oversaw 5 to 6 different programming teams in different locations. So I had to travel a lot, and I had to count on them to build their teams really well. During those years, I also had a lot of team members that reported to me internally. Great experience. Then 6 years, I started. After that, I ran my own software training company. I founded it. I was the president of it. And I worked with a lot of companies on how to develop high-performing team members in regards to their software usage. Then 4 years later, I was hired by one of my clients to come on board as a director of sales for the national company, which I did. And very similar to the first 4 years where I was working for a software company, this one was a national company across several states. I was the director of sales. I had a very large sales force. Started with about 150 team members in 60 offices throughout the different states. And I grew it to about 200, 225, 220 employees. We went from $220 million to $280 million within the 3-year span, opened up an additional 20 offices. So the experience that all this combined has given me a lot of knowledge and a lot of understanding how to onboard people, how to onboard teams. And then for the past 11, 12 years, I've been the president of Team Real World. And in that, we have helped over my span. I've hired about 200 plus people in my career. I've trained over 100 managers and supervisors on how to hire approximately 500 people. Unfortunately, I've seen too many people get dismissed or lose their jobs unnecessarily because of how they handled employees or how they were handled. Okay, I saw too many people lose their jobs because of how they were handled. And unfortunately, I saw too many managers likewise lose their jobs and deter their careers because they could not effectively build people and grow high-performing teams. This became a real big obstacle for me. I kept seeing it not only in my life and the people that we hired. We just could not hire enough people. And then in 2005, myself and several managers I was working with said that we had enough. It's enough is enough. We got to change things. We have to look at this differently. And so we put together this onboarding program, which this webinar is part of that. And that's what we're going to cover today, is with the secret sauce. So make sure you stay until the end. If you have any questions during this webinar, make sure you use the GoToMeeting option. Chat me, or you can text me at 225-505-2823. Our team is here ready to receive the questions, and they'll feed them to me. I need to give you a disclaimer that a lot of this was very much an eye-opening experience when I read the book, The First 90 Days. So I encourage you to go read The First 90 Days. If you can't read but just the first two chapters, then go read the first two chapters. That first chapter on how to understand the psychology of people when they come into teams is a game changer. Go get it. Michael Watkins does an incredible job. You'll hear a lot of that here, and then what we've done in the past 7-8 years to build around that and produce the tools and the concepts on how to apply this. All right, so how to do this. Let's dive into part one, how not to onboard people and how to onboard people. All right, so the first thing we have to look at and to determine how not to onboard is the problem. Adam Robinson in July 2018 in Inc. Magazine put a really good article out there, the top 3 reasons why new employees quit in the first 90 days. And how to prevent it. This right here, this slide does not capture your attention of why this is important, then everything else won't make any sense and you won't see why it's worth opening your eyes and seeing the world a little differently. First of all, he points out that 1 in 4 employees quit during the first 90 days on the job. That is exactly what we saw. That is exactly what we suffered when I was doing this prior to 2005, using the wrong process, and realized we've got to make a change. I've got to make a change. And we didn't know what to do. But the reality was we were seeing this. Then the statistics show even a much more eye-popping data is that it's up to 28% really of new employees quit within the first days on the job. And he encourages that it's critical to do everything in your power to keep new employees excited and engaged rather than risk losing top talent and needing to start the hiring process over and over again. Later in this webinar, I will show you the cost of that and why it is better for you to develop your people up front. It is better for you to develop low-performing employees that are already on your team before having to start the hiring process again. So you shouldn't have the luxury to give up on people and say, oh, well, you know what, I'll just find somebody else. No, that is not the right approach. All right, the other thing that he points out is that one of the major reasons is that we don't have a structured onboarding process. So it's a great point that he makes. The last thing any new employee really wants to do is show up to on the first day only to find that the team is unprepared without any form of structured onboarding program. Okay, so the reality of it is that everybody, the vast majority of companies approach the onboarding of people in a very unprepared way. It's a mad dash in the last day or even afterwards where people come into their office, their computers aren't set up, they really have no idea what to do when they first make the past day or the first day. Their systems aren't set up, their computers not set up, their chairs, maybe they have a place to work, maybe it's busy. It's obviously unprepared. And then they start being told 3 or 4 different things by different people. It's a Keystone Cop approach. And that's the reality of it. Number 2, he points out that the expectations and goals are not clear. Let's read what that says there. The recent data found that 43% of employees who left the job within the first 90 days did so because the day-to-day job was not what they were expecting. So what they heard or what they think they heard before the onboarding, their first day on the job is quite different, or it became very different than what they were expecting. Now, it is not realistic for your job to always stay exactly the same. That's not realistic, and that's part of the onboarding process. You explain that and you make sure that people aren't so they're not open to change to a certain degree, but you can't walk into a job where my responsibilities are A, B, C, and D, and then I end up really finding that my job is D, E, F, and G, and that the environment is totally different than what you told me, and the expectations are so odd and so off base. And this is where people just really get disengaged very fast. However, what I'll point out to you shortly is that most people don't leave. A lot of people leave, but most people don't leave, and they stay disengaged for the same reasons. All right, so let's look at number 3. The third reason is because training usually stops after the onboarding process. So we saw this in the way we were handling it, and I continue to see it in clients' approach, is that they hire folks and then they pretty much just send them on their own or leave them alone. There's very little follow-up. I'll show you what that looks like in a couple slides. But let's point out what he says is to succeed and stay motivated in their roles. Employees need continuous training. I'm going to change a word there. Continuous training can also be continuous coaching, continuous mentoring. And this should go beyond any general onboarding sessions during the first week. I'm sorry to say that most companies don't have an organized onboarding session that lasts any more than perhaps one day, much less a week. But then after that, it just stops. It gets handed off to the managers, and the managers do not provide any type of ongoing coaching or mentoring. So these are the problems. This is the reality. This is what we're up against. So let's dive let's take a look at the notes from this article. The key things to start jotting down is that you have to be prepared. You have to receive them with a well-organized process. You have to clarify expectations way up front so that they're not surprised. And you have to provide mentoring to help them perform well and stay performing well. So make sure you jot those down. You'll get copies of this presentation in a PDF afterwards at the end of the webinar. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is be open-minded to this. I want you to really change your glasses, whether you have glasses or not, change the way you view things, because we are going to ask you to look at things a little differently, okay? But I'll tell you from our experience, these things that we're going to ask you are not only game changers, they really work. And they work long lasting if you're consistent to apply these and give it a chance for these things to really develop and nurture.